Okay, good evening and welcome to the Highgate Selectboard meeting for January 20th, 2022. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So do we have anyone for public comment that is not on our agenda? Okay. Hearing none, we have Sean with us from the Communications Union District. Good evening, Sean.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me.
So what's the status of our CUD?
Yeah, sure. I'm glad Heidi and Michael invited me. Certainly, we've been somewhat working kind of behind the scenes a little bit, getting some stuff done. We were certainly gonna make our way around to each municipality, certainly after town meeting day. We were kind of giving everyone a little bit of space too, because we understand budget season and things can be a little tough to squeeze in non-essential stuff. We are still in our planning phase. We should have had it last week. There's some COVID illnesses that are slowing some progress down, but we should have our comprehensive business plan and our financial modeling for the entirety of our project. And just to kind of recap, our project is essentially all of, for the most part, all of Franklin, Grand Isle, and Milton. Milton joined a couple weeks back, and I just heard from Grand Isle that they signed the resolution this past week as well. So that leaves South Hero as kind of the one community that is to be joined. So we currently are at 20 member communities, which makes up around 29,000 premises, so homes and businesses. And we're planning to serve just about all of it, anywhere where fiber does not currently exist, where somebody does not currently have 100 megabytes over 100 megabyte service. That is our objective and our plan to build out to all of those. We're working closely with Lamoille CUD as well. We're collaborating on a project, and we're seeking an agreement with a retail provider. We've been having discussions with this provider for some weeks now, and my hope is here, at least by the end of February, we'll have a master services agreement with them, where they will be our anchor tenant on our open access fiber network. And we should, the construction RFP from the Vermont Community Broadband Board actually was issued yesterday or the day before, which we will be applying to for additional funds to begin our construction likely this year. What that construction window looks like for us, we're not sure yet. Just as a reminder, we are the youngest of all the CUDs. So some of the others have been around for many years. And we were created in August of 2020. So we have some catching up to do, but we feel like we're in a good place to access the funds that are available to us. And for those who saw the governor's, let's call it financial budget address yesterday, I believe, it looks like the governor is seeking to allocate an additional $195 million to state broadband efforts, in addition to what is already made available. And much of that is being positioned for the CUDs. So we feel like we're in a very fortunate position that the majority, certainly not 100%, but the majority of our networks will be paid for by grant funds, which is super beneficial to us. And ultimately, the cost savings is passed down to the subscribers who will ultimately be a part of the network, or subscribe through a retail ISP on our network. We've been busy. I got hired officially back in October. We've filled 2 other employee spots, administrative support personnel. She is currently part-time. She started about 2 weeks ago, and we have a operations project manager who will help coordinate with the utilities and the construction vendors. She begins on Monday. So we've been staffing up, getting prepared for kind of the next phase of this. Once we have our business plan and our financial modelings in place, we'll seek to find vendors to do the construction work. And again, we'll likely do that in tandem with Lamoille, and seek additional funds from the VCBB. That's kind of where we're at right now. I wanted to, I know Michael had some questions. Michael's the new representative, and certainly should you guys have additional questions, I'm here to answer those.
All right, Sean, since you gave me the in, Sean, I will use it. And since I'm the new kid on the block, I was wondering if you would give us a step-by-step overview of how we're going to go from now, which is about 97% of people needing an upgrade in fast internet, to finally getting it in place for everybody in the town. So that would be helpful to get an overview.
Yeah, sure. Step by step will be tough, but I'll give you an overview. Certainly we need to have our business plan and our financial modeling in place. That is kind of our key to access the funds with the state. Once that's in place, then we'll likely roughly around that same time, we will secure our agreement with our internet service provider, at least our anchor tenant. Our network is different in that it's open. We can have several providers, and ideally we will. We understand that it can be a challenge for some providers to be on a network like ours, because not everyone has the ability or capabilities operationally to serve, as many as 10, 15, 20,000 premises. So we will secure a provider. We also need to seek a network operator. Us ourselves, we are going to be the owner of the infrastructure. The CUD will be the owner of the infrastructure and manage contracts. Essentially, we do not foresee ourselves becoming an ISP. That's certainly not our space. Consumers won't sign up with us. They're going to sign up with an ISP. We're working with the utilities to find a management system that works for network operations and maintenance, as well as other independent vendors like a Eustis or Crossbow, which are fiber splicing companies that can come out and should a fiber break happen, or we need to do a new installation, we can outsource that work along the way. We'll hire contract construction companies to come in and actually physically put electronics in the field, put the fiber on poles, and that'll happen in phases. We're not going to be able to do all 29,000 all at one time. My hope is we may be able to do 2 at once. So we may be able to do kind of like let's call it an islands project and a mainland project at the same time, with kind of concentric rings for redundancy. Not sure if that's doable. Everyone's facing the same issue. We're one of 9 CUDs amongst other utilities and ISPs in the state. Everyone's fighting for the same resources in terms of workforce, so it's certainly a challenge, and we're aware of that, and that's something that we're trying to make steps to make sure we're in a good position to have good quality contractors to work with. So we'll contract with contractors, and we'll do it in phases. We'll finance, plan, and build phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is going to be a 4-year project. What the phases look like yet are kind of to be determined. We have some kind of preliminary views, but we don't necessarily know exactly the order just yet. We're certainly seeking to do this we need to do this in kind of an equitable way, but also an affordable way. And we want to build out in areas of most need. The CUD's priority is finding a solution to serve those addresses of most need. But at the same time, our model is a little bit different in that we're trying to solve the bigger issue of roughly 97%. 30% of our entire district is considered underserved or unserved. And then there's that huge gap of everyone else that's kind of just has like marginal service. And certainly 10 years down the road, that's not going to get any better. Everyone's going to be kind of still stuck with that. So we're trying to solve that for the long run. One of our, our mission statements is affect a generational change to broadband service for our region. And we feel like we're in a good position to do that.
Let me readdress it a little bit more. What does Highgate have to do in order to get broadband from where we are now to 100 by 100 service? Are you prepared to do everything for us and we just monitor? Or is it that we have to physically do something to be prepared to participate?
For the most part, it's participating in the process. It's being a part of the meetings. It's reporting back to the board and letting them know what's happening. I did send a survey out to all the communities. I want to say several weeks ago, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. When we get into the design process, which we have not yet gotten there yet. We did that kind of preliminarily. We will be reaching out more. Our ops project manager will likely tackle that. That'll be one of her first tasks, is going community by community, identifying some space within each community. Ideally, that's potentially some municipal space. And by space, I mean just a 10 by 10 or a 20 by 20 square of land that we could put a communication shed or put some cabinets down as a distribution point for each individual community. If that is unavailable, we will need to put that at electric substations, which is not always, in kind of the center of a community. Usually they're kind of on the outskirts. So it makes the build out a little bit more challenging, but at least at this point, it's participating in the process, being a part of the meetings. And then, the most immediate thing will be, that for the design processes, we'll be reaching out to each community and asking them to help us identify some space that'll help us with the distribution lines through their communities and finding a centralized hub that would serve for your community.
Is it that I heard correctly in your opening remarks that the state is going to fund the broadband build out and that there will not be a requirement to float a bond from, say, Highgate or other communities around?
The grants pipeline we're estimating right now the grants pipeline for the CUDs will fund roughly 60 to 65% of a total build out. The arrangement that we're trying to seek, or that we're working towards with an ISP, has the potential to cover the rest of the capital expense. We will need to essentially finance that, but the agreement will kind of pay that portion of it. The individual communities, our CUD is not asking at any contributions from the individual communities. So your local ARPA dollars and stuff like that. We took an early position. That's not something that we would ask for. And certainly from a bond, a municipal bond, we don't have access to municipal bonds. We can do revenue bonds. We can't do municipal bonds, and we cannot, it's protected under state statute that the CUDs cannot ask to do that on our behalf. It's not allowed.
Well, it looks like the money's okay for a while, so that's good.
Yeah, we feel like we're in a fortunate, and in part that's why we before the Treasury guidance, which just came out just a few days ago officially, we took an early stance that we felt that there was a very optimistic pipeline for broadband funding. And we had made some assumptions that the governor would be very supportive, and he was. We feel like we're in a very good financial position moving forward to finance the majority of this project via grants.
It sounds wonderful. Let me ask you one other question. I noticed from the first meeting I attended and everything that Comcast seems to be public enemy #1 as far as you folks are concerned. So the question is, they are already here. They are providing service to people. I'm using it tonight. And my personal experience has been that when I was in New Jersey and when I've been here, I've gotten good service out of them and decent speeds and everything. It's expensive, but the question is, what is your view of Comcast? And I get the distinct impression that we're going to go into competition with Comcast, but perhaps there's things I don't know about this that you can help me with.
Yeah, certainly if our intention, which it is, to build out to essentially 97% of that 29,000, we will overbuild cable. You know, and where we've, those who are unaware, I've been in the industry for a long time. I've worked for several different providers, both good and bad. And, you know, our viewpoint or our ethos is that broadband should be a public utility. It should be for the public good, and it shouldn't necessarily just be for profits and margin. You know, I understand the financial challenges that an incumbent provider like a Comcast or Consolidated or any of the others face when trying to do expansion, whether expanding on their own current technology or certainly fiber. Fiber is pricey. I get that. But for us, we've seen, and I'm sure you folks as well have seen for many years now, those same incumbent providers take federal and state subsidies to do expansion and to build out rural Vermont. And yet here we find ourselves many years later with the same issues of rural Vermont not having connectivity. So that's, you know, in a sense, why the CUDs were created, is, you know, out of that frustration of the incumbent providers not actually solving the problem. You know, the solution of throwing money at a problem did not work. So now it's, you know, it's kind of cliche, but it's you know, a Vermont problem that Vermonters are solving. And you know, that's essentially the position that we've taken with the incumbents. And certainly they have their place. You know, we early on entertained a number of conversations with national, regional, local providers to try to find partnerships and efficiencies that would potentially work. When we were also kind of looking at, you know, how do we do this? You know, we had a lot of conversations, and, you know, we wanted to make sure that whoever we chose as partners, both operationally or, you know, as a service provider, that they were the best fit for our district and what we felt was the best option for the local communities.
No, I like that point of view. The systems are not identical. The system on fiber optic is a lot more efficient and possible or amenable to changes in the future. I like that concept of it. But the fact is that they are here and that they are making business out of it. I appreciate that they're cherry picking in terms of where they can make a buck here and there, and they do. But I think your point is well taken, that they haven't provided service at an acceptable level to 97% of Highgate right now. So from that point of view, probably let me ask you a further question. Do you feel that it's worth doing any further conversations with the folks at Comcast, or do you feel that you've had the discussions you need to have and you've gone in this direction?
We've I've been around long enough and know the politics of it, I guess I'll say. And, you know, certainly we've had those discussions. They're a large enough entity that it's a case of certainly for a case of Comcast, speaking ill of them, they're a great company in some aspects, but it's we would have to concede quite a lot of our vision and kind of what we seek. Many ISPs, even some here in the state, some regional and state ISPs are seeking an exclusive agreement. They want to be the only you know, the only guy in town, let's say, and that's not what we want to offer. We want our network to ultimately be open access. Comcast could come to us tomorrow and say, hey, we love what you're doing. We want to be a part of it. We want to jump on your network. And if that's the case, okay, great. I don't see them doing that oftentimes because they don't like to compete. They want it to have control of the market, and that's nationwide for the most part. That's kind of how telecom has been operated. Is there's that's why you don't see Comcast and Frontier and others compete directly with one another. Usually they kind of carve out territories. But our network will be open. Any provider, large or small, can jump on the network and provide services if they chose to do that.
Is there a limit to the number that we could have on our network?
Theoretically, I mean, there may be some broadband capacity concerns, but that's kind of the benefit of a fiber optic network, and we plan to build this with capacity in mind, certainly for the broadband need, but also just potential premise growth through this district. Should we see a boom in housing, let's say, that we'll be prepared for that, and we won't have to. I know just down my street here in Tyler Branch and Enosburg, depending on if somebody's moving in or out, people are fighting for just a pair of DSL cable, to get internet connection. And I'm sure that's not an uncommon story. I'm sure there's other folks that have seen that happen elsewhere. We don't want to find ourselves in that situation 20, 30 years down the road where we're like, well, we didn't really consider that. So we're certainly building for a number of contingencies and capacity issues that we foresee in the future.
So, does the select board have any questions for Sean?
Not at this point.
No.
Does anyone else in the public have questions for Sean?
Yes, I got 2 short questions.
Go ahead, Ty.
So, Sean, I'm probably one of the 3% that is served at my location here in Highgate. My question is this network that you guys are creating going to give me options, potentially give somebody that is in that 3% options to join, do I want Comcast or do I want what you guys are going to offer? You know what I'm asking?
Yeah, if your premise is likely one of the lucky few that has fiber and currently has at least 100 over 100 in terms of service, it's likely not a part of our plan, and that's dictated by the funding that's made available to us. The current funding is dictated by anything under 25 under 3. The future, the additional 195 announced by the governor will likely be 100 over 20, which accounts for that additional 97%. But if you're one of those lucky few that currently has what I'll call good quality service, at least 100 over 100, you will not be part of our plan. And that's just, we don't want, we don't want to overbuild where that currently exists. That's the state's 10-year goal as well, is that every household will have that 100 over 100 minimum level of service. And if it currently exists, that's probably not something that we can fund.
But potentially if it was passing through.
True.
Right.
True. If it's passing through, yeah, we're not going to just skip over it. But if it's down the same street where we're addressing other things, yeah.
And the second question, and it's not really, I guess, relevant to Highgate per se, but you talked about the state subsidies that the the Comcasts have gotten in the years. With this funding, has some of that state subsidy for those gone away now, or are we paying for both?
Nah. There's different programs. There's still an RDOF program that is kind of like a reverse auction. That's still happening. The CUDs were not in a position at the time, and we still aren't, to really bid on RDOF. At the time, there's only one CUD, that's EC Fiber, that was in the position to actually bid on that, on getting funds to address some of the underserved areas. So there are still subsidy programs available, it's less so. Much of the funding that the CUDs have access to is from federal legislation. It's not necessarily out of state budgeting. It's out of federal legislation. It's CARES Act funding, which was kind of our initial blocks to get things going. ARPA dollars, and then now it's going to be the infrastructure bill as the primary funding sources for CUDs.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, not a problem.
Okay, any last questions for Sean? Okay, thank you very much, Sean, for giving us a good idea of where you plan to head and what that means for Highgate.
Yeah, absolutely. And should anybody, any of the board members, any members of the public in Highgate have any questions? I mean, we certainly, I know I try to be as available as possible and answer any questions. I know I get emails and questions a few times a week, so I always enjoy them and entertain those. So should anyone have any thoughts or questions, I mean, feel free to reach out, and we're glad to have Michael on board, and I appreciate the few minutes, and thanks.
All right, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming. Okay, moving on. Northwest Regional Planning Commission has Representative Greta Brunswick with us.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am here to talk about the potential eligibility and considerations around the town applying for the BRELA program for the former town garage property, which is part of the village core redevelopment. So I did send an email that I believe, and some materials that I believe Heidi provided in your packet. So I'm going to provide a little background. Oops, I just got cut off from my internet. Hello?
We can hear you
Oh,
fine.
we're still here. Okay, great. I'm not cut off from my internet. Something just dinged in my computer. Everything went blank. I'm back. And so I'm going to summarize some of that information, and then if you have some questions, we can talk about it. So why we're talking about this right now is that there is some additional assessment, perhaps you know this, that is recommended for the village core properties, both on the former Machia piece and the former town garage piece. And so this is sort of some supplemental assessment that was recommended after the phase two, the broader big phase two assessment that was done in 2017. The reason why we haven't gone and done that additional assessment has been because your redevelopment plan is not ready yet. And so there hasn't been a real urgent need to do that assessment. What it would do is just refine the potential size of the area that might need corrective action in a few on each property. And so and it would sort of guide and help you make decisions in terms of how the property would be redeveloped and where corrective action might happen. So it's really the type of assessment that it is really geared towards when you're ready to start thinking about redevelopment and cleanup. And so our funding, our brownfield assessment funding is competitive. And so because there wasn't this immediate need to have those answers now, it wasn't something that was engaged or asked for in terms of our committee, our brownfields committee committing it and moving forward. But so the BRELA program, the town was able to enter the BRELA program for the former Machia property because you bought that property. And so as a bona fide prospective purchaser, you completed your phase one assessment prior to purchase, and that makes you eligible for the Brownfields Reuse and Environmental Liability Limitation Act, or what we call BRELA. And so for the former town garage property, you were a current landowner. And because it was formerly used as a town garage, there was potential that the town was responsible for the contamination. And so therefore you were not eligible for BRELA at that time. And so the way these two properties are managed at the state is different. There's some benefits to being umbrella, one of which is that the state is a little bit more relaxed in the timing of redevelopment. And so they didn't come knocking on the door about the former Meshi estate in terms of why it's not cleaned up yet, because you're umbrella and they know you're working on redevelopment. They did come knocking to say, hey, what's going on with a former town garage, because you're not umbrella. So they're just sort of managed a little differently. But now that we've done the phase 2 assessment, we're considering right now whether the town is eligible to apply for umbrella for the former town garage property. So we can consider these sites together as one, as the town does, the village core redevelopment, and for them to be both managed under the state's the state umbrella program. Another benefit of umbrella that is outlined in the material I gave you is that once you do your cleanup plan, you get a certificate of completion. And once you have that completion certificate, you will not be liable for any additional contamination that might be found. So you outline, the state approves a work plan, you quantify the potential contamination that exists there, you clean it up, and then you're done. And so the issues that exist at the site are polyaromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, and then in the middle of the town garage property around SB9, there is some elevated arsenic and lead. And so the environmental consultant that completed this assessment, VHB, believes that they can make a case that the elevated contaminants that have been found on this property were likely not from the use of the town's use of it as a town garage, and that they were likely from the prior owner before 1951 when the town took acquisition. So there are some photographs that show that when it was used for a foundry, and there was some scrap metal storage around that location where there's these elevated levels, along with a transformer. So based on that evidence, the consultant thinks that as part of your application to umbrella, you can make a case that, yes, we use this property as a town garage, but we did a comprehensive environmental assessment, and the results show that the contaminants that are elevated above limits, are not the type of contaminants that would have been caused by our town garage use of property. So therefore, we feel that we were not responsible for the elevated levels that exist there. So the issue that I would like you to consider and take caution on before applying for umbrella, and this is something that I spoke with the site manager about, is that on the application, and this is one of the other materials that I provided to you with the agenda packet, there's a highlighted section that as a current landowner, you have to affirm several statements. And one of those statements is operated or controlled the operation at the property of a facility for the storage, treatment, or disposal of hazardous materials at the property. And so the town needs to affirm that. And so this is just a statement that I don't know exactly what type of town garage existed there, but I know there's been some brief conversation that it was not, a garage where vehicles were serviced, and perhaps you feel comfortable making that statement, perhaps you don't. But that is something that the site manager at DEC cautioned the town on. Because if you made that statement and at some point in time in the future there was contamination found, your umbrella eligibility could potentially be called into question, and perhaps you would be liable for that. Instead of having your certificate of completion, there would be a hole in it because you made the statement and it was untrue. So that's just something that I want to caution you on and think about, and perhaps consult with your legal counsel on. But otherwise, once you make that decision, the application process is something that I can help facilitate should you decide you would like to apply. one of the reasons why this came up right now, in addition to the state sort of reaching out and knocking on the town's door and saying, hey, what's going on with the former town council property? Are you moving forward? Is that in order to access our current pot of funding, which is not from EPA, it's funding that was appropriated by the state legislature with recovery funds that's being funneled through ACCD. BRELA is a requirement. It's, so you need to have BRELA eligibility in order to move forward. The cost of the assessment that is needed is a total of $13,000 for both sites. It's $7,500 at the former Macy Estate and $10,000 at the former town garage. They don't add up because there is a efficiency in doing them together. But if you were to separate them, that's what the difference would be. And so I guess now I would entertain any questions. I know that there might have been a lot of information to digest, but I'm happy to entertain any questions and walk you through anything that you might need me to walk through.
Greta, the last time I heard about this, there was only one assessment. And as I understand it, the level of contamination is reasonably shallow and can be dealt with reasonably in a straightforward manner. Has that changed? And I hadn't heard anything about the lead and
no, it's shallow soils. It's shallow soils that have elevated levels of PAH. And then in one targeted hotspot in the center of the former town garage piece of the parcel, lead and arsenic. But so these are not, I think that these are, because it's shallow and your site, you're dealing with a sizable site, depending on what the redevelopment is, you would likely be able to keep all of the contaminated soils on site, move it around and cover the soils that are contaminated. Meaning like you would cover it with a cap, you would have a corrective action plan approved by the state. And so you could cover it with, 12 inches of clean fill and grass or pavement. And that would be that would be how you would manage it. But the question is how much soil needs to be managed. And that does impact the cost of redevelopment and impacts, how much soil you need to move around, how much soil you need to cover.
Okay, but what I'm getting around to is the idea that is it possible that once you get in there and you start the excavation, that you may find more than you expect, which again would be a hit for more money in order to do it properly? That's what I'm asking.
So the benefit of being umbrella is once you have an approved work plan by DEC and you have an approved corrective action plan with how you're managing the contaminants that have been found that are elevated, that is all you're responsible for. And so I suppose if there was if there were additional contaminants found, I guess that would be unlikely because the work plan that is approved under the BRELA program is comprehensive. The goal of that program is to fully characterize all of the potential contaminants that exist. And so, that's why there's second rounds of assessment that are potentially recommended. And so yes, it could happen, and that could potentially add to the cost if it's something that happened before you get your certificate of completion. But that's just, I think the goal of DEC is to make a thorough work plan so that the likelihood of that happening is low. But it's possible, and that is just certainly a risk that is part of the game of redeveloping urban properties or properties in historic centers.
Well, when you do this kind of stuff, for remediation, you can do one of two things. You can either dilute it so that it's below the concentration that's objectionable and safe, or that you can actually dig it up and cart it away and replace it. But there's also natural metals that are within the soil itself. Polyaromatic hydrocarbons are not something that you'd expect to be in a natural soil and be around. That's our pollution pretty much. But lead and arsenic is possible, and I can appreciate, you know, higher levels from a foundry, for example, than you would expect to see naturally. So that's why I'm interested in how deep it is, and if it looks like it's fairly straightforward to do and everything. But I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Greta, do they have a specification for hazmat? There are different types of hazardous materials, different levels. I would be concerned about, as the current owner, number E, letter E, generated hazardous materials that were disposed of at the property as well.
Yeah, potentially. Again, I don't know exactly how the town garage, what that type of use consisted of. And so, but if you feel that that was something that, if you feel that that's something based on your current knowledge or of what that use, of what happened there when it was a town garage, then that, you know, then it could be that the town does not feel comfortable attesting to that. Or perhaps it's unknown. I don't know, but that's what I'm bringing to the table here right now, is that, you know, this is something that, in order to enter BRELA, these are the statements you need to affirm. And it, you know, there's a possibility that the town might not be comfortable affirming those statements based on how the town garage operated. And in that case, then we think of, okay, plan B, you know, how do we move forward with the assessment and when?
What would be plan B if we didn't enter into the BRELA?
That was really quiet. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
What would be plan B? What other options would we have?
So it would just be a matter of the funding source I have right now would not be able to would not be accessible to you. And so there's a potential that you could apply for the Machia piece at 7,500. And then, you know, if you're doing it separate, the cost is higher, but do it, the Highgate Town Garage piece is $10,000. Although if we were to do them if we were to do them in one effort and just split the cost of the 13,000 between two, I'd have to figure out what that would be, you know, but sort of the consultant would just say, okay, well, this amount is going towards the Machia and this amount is going towards the town garage. But my funding source would not be able to fund any work on the town garage property. And so that bill would need to be covered by the town.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
I just wanted to add something I wasn't able to put into your packet. When we were having previous discussions about the Jedware landfill, and the state wanted to understand if Highgate had contributed to the disposal of hazardous waste at that site. A couple of past select board chairs, including Richard Noel and Ray LaRush, signed off that there was not maintenance going on at that property, that they were taking the vehicles to a dealer or a service station to have the oil changes performed. So they weren't collecting or storing oil. So I think that's pertinent to that situation, and maybe that's something I could get a little more information on that might give the board a little more confidence in the uses there.
Yes, I think we'd need to have some more investigation on that before I would feel comfortable.
Absolutely.
And it looks like the board is nodding their heads, so yeah, I would say that we want to be extremely transparent with the state and NRPC.
And Greta, could you just comment? So if we don't move forward with this round of funding you have, it does not hold up anything that the town is doing on that property. Is that correct? I mean, we're still able to move forward.
No, so if the town decides not to apply to Brella right now, the town and I can coordinate with the town on updating the state where we're at. And I think that as long as you update them more frequently than we had been in terms, or at least that there was a different site manager. The site manager for the Machia estate for the one that was under Brella knew what was going on. The site manager for the former town garage was sort of in a different department and wasn't really as privy to all the work the town's been doing for the village core property. So I think it's just a matter of updating them more. And if they know that the town's moving forward and it's not just something that they've forgotten about and sitting there and they're not going to, and that they're not going to, thinking that they don't have to do anything more, then I think that they'll be fine. They just want to hear from the town that that things are happening. So I think that would be the next step. You wouldn't necessarily need to do the sampling now. As I said before, it's something that is relevant to your redevelopment plan. And when you're closer to cleanup, that's when it really needs to happen. It's not, it's not a big sampling effort, $13,000. It's taking, well, I can tell you exactly, it's 9 shallow soil borings on the Machia estate, and it is, so around SB9, which is where the scrap metal storage was in the middle of the former town garage property. What they want to do is take one sample there and then go out in consecutive rings. So they would take 5 samples in a ring, the first ring, 7 samples in the second ring, and 9 samples in the third ring. But they would only go out that consecutive ring if there was an elevated level in the first ring. So they wouldn't do all of those samples unless there was a need to consecutively go out further from SB9, because SB9 is kind of the hotspot. And so they're trying to figure out, well, how big is that hotspot? And it's for arsenic and lead. And yes, arsenic and lead are what are considered background soil, or there's background levels of these contaminants in the soil. The state has studied that, and they understand, or they've defined levels where if you exceed that, then there is cleanup that's needed. But in urban village center areas, those levels are higher because they understand, especially in urban centers, PAH exists everywhere in historic centers from the historic industry that happened there. And so it deposits from the atmosphere from former uses that had combustion. So that is the work. It's not a major sampling effort. That is the work that needs to get done at some point. And I think if you don't decide to move forward with it now and don't apply for Brella, that communication with the state will be acceptable. And you can sort of continue on with the rest of your planning that you're engaged in relating to the village core property. One of the things we were considering this Brella eligibility right now because I have some funding on the table. So there would potentially be option to access or apply for that funding if you were in Brella.
Okay, so I think we need to do a little more research and see what happens on our end and keep you informed as we learn more.
And is there a deadline, Greta, that you want an answer on this?
No, there's not for my funding. Yeah, I guess. Within a month, I'd like to know whether Brella is something that you'd like to pursue.
So Sharon, I guess a couple of things. First thing, cost of every study is going to go up the longer we wait. But the second thing is, to Greta, is there some negotiation that needs to happen with the people, the company that is gonna do the work if the town chooses to go with that. My thought is that the $10,000, is that a worst case scenario if they have to go out all 3 rings? Or is it 10,000, no matter if it's 1 ring or 3 rings?
Yeah, so that would encompass all of the sampling, that if they were to do all of the 5 and then the 7 and then the 9, and there's potential that all of those samples wouldn't be needed and the cost would be lower.
Any other questions?
So I don't know, so that is one way the cost could be lower, but and certainly if it was something the town funded on their own, you could use whatever consultant you want and try to negotiate. I mean, this is one of our pre-qualified consultants who is familiar with brownfields, and they make it pretty tight. So I'm comfortable with these estimates, and I don't think that they are, there's too much fluff to get rid of here.
Okay, we will do our research and try to let you know within the month. Preferably sooner the better.
Great, thank you. Have a nice night, everyone.
Thank you, Greta.
Okay, moving on. We have our animal control officer, Shelby Barber. Shelby, are you with us?
Hi.
Hi.
So, big ol' heads up. I can't hardly hear what you four are saying, like, at all. So, I'm trying real hard. Like, my face is pressed to the computer over here. But, it is awfully quiet over there. But, basically, what I'm here for today is we do not have a leash law in Highgate. And back in November, we had a situation where 2 separate people were walking their dogs. One dog was leashed, one dog was not. The dog that wasn't, they walked by each other and everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, the dog that wasn't leashed just turned around and went after the dog that was leashed. There were injuries to the little dog, but the owner, like, there wasn't really a whole lot we could do. Because the owner of the dog that was injured just refused to bring the dog to the vet. So, I mean, in that case, I don't know. I don't have much I can do. But basically what I was hoping for is, instead of, like, I know Highgate's a pretty remote area. Like, not unless you live, like, right in the middle of town, you probably can't see your neighbor. So I think as far as the leash law goes, like, when you're on your own property, I feel like it's okay to not be leashed. But if you're going to walk or be in a public area, like walking down the road, on sidewalks and parks, anything like that, maybe we should have it be the rule to have your dog leashed to kind of prevent these situations from happening. And it was kind of like an isolated incident too, because from what I understand, the dog that attacked the other dog is like a super sweet dog. Just kind of something, I don't know.
Okay. Does the board have a feeling about leash laws?
I'm guessing if you had a leash law, would it be for like rail trail and immediate in town?
We could certainly do it to those specs,
'Cause
yes.
I don't see where you're gonna be able to enforce it outside of that.
Right. So public spaces, maybe?
Public spaces.
Elby, did this happen on town property?
Yes. Hold on.
Happened
Let me look.
on the walking path, I believe.
I think so.
I
Hold on, let
think
me
it
look
did.
back. Was it on the walking path? I feel like he was on the road. They were on the road.
No, I think they were on the walking path that goes around the arena and the school. Both dog owners live right in that vicinity, and I think they go there daily. They had seen each other several times. Like you said, it was isolated, but I'm pretty sure this happened either on town or school property right there.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
How many issues have we had over the last year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years?
By the way, I don't know if you guys are talking to me or not. I'm not. If so, I'm not responding to you.
Okay, so the question was asked, how many incidents have there been in the last 1, 2, or 5 years?
Well, I've only been doing this for a little over a year, so this is the only one that's happened that I'm aware of in the last year. I don't know. It kind of just feels like a precautionary thing.
Well, I can say that it has happened to me on the walking path before, where someone had their dog not on a leash.
Yeah. And I mean, it can be scary, you know, and everybody just wants to spend good quality time with their pets. They want to take them out for their walks or jogs or, you know, take them to the park, and that's fine. But I feel like the safety of all the animals, and not all animals are bad, but they can be, no matter how good your dog is or anybody else's dog is, they can be a little unpredictable. You never know. Sometimes, just like the way people just don't get along, sometimes animals are the same way. They just, you know, walk by and they're like, hey, you know what? I don't like the way you smell and I got a problem with it. It can happen.
You smell okay,
Definitely.
Kyle, you're good.
I took a shower, thanks.
I mean, so if we change the ordinance and now people have to leash their pets on public land, I mean, what then is going to be the consequence if there's an issue? I'm just.
So Chris is asking, if we put this ordinance in force, now I've completely lost.
I mean, what's the resolution if
What-
there's another issue?
If we have a dog ordinance, then they could be fined.
Okay. So
Yeah.
now there's other things.
I guess they can also, if the person, if you have the ordinance and one of the two parties didn't have a leash on, the animal that was injured, say that one was the one leashed and the one that wasn't leashed, well, then the owner can go after them for vet bills as well, I
Right.
guess.
And, I mean, what liability might the town have, if any?
No, I think,
I would think we'd have more liability not having a leash law.
right,
Agreed.
right. Because if something were to happen on our property. Wendy, are you able to hear us?
I can hear you. I can hear Chris faintly, and you repeating the questions is helpful. I can hear you. I think you're just closer to the.
Yeah, it's gotten a little better for me as well.
Don't be bashful. Everybody just speak up.
We have not redone our dog ordinance since 2014. Steve Bushy was on the board last time that was redone, so it might be worth looking at, see if it needs some tweaking.
I would be good with that. To go through it and see if there are updates that need to be made. I would agree with Kyle that it would be more liability for the town if we did not have a leash ordinance. If something were to happen to an animal on the town's property. Is that agreeable to look through that and
Yeah, and I
update and reapprove?
think I'd also ask Shelby if she goes through that ordinance as well, if there's anything else that you see that might need to be tweaked or changed, just to give us
Yeah, I've definitely skimmed it, but I can give it a more like thorough reading through and see if I feel like anything needs to be updated.
that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, let's review this again in the future.
Question.
Yes?
So let me see if I'm understanding this. If a dog gets loose or gets away from his or its yard and ends up in my yard, there is nothing that, there are no ramifications for that because the animal isn't being walked, he just escaped. What's the law, what's the code? What goes on?
What the leash law states right now is that even though the dog doesn't have to be on a leash attached to the owner, it still needs to be on the owner's property, whether and under control by, like, it can be on a tie, it can be in a fenced-in yard, or it can be on a leash. Otherwise, it has to be under verbal command of its owner right now. But even with that, it's just, it doesn't leave, it just doesn't give much. You know, I mean, a dog, I can tell you right now that if either of my dogs were to see somebody walking down the road, if they weren't tied up, they don't have very good recall. And yeah, that really sucks because I do a lot with animals. So the fact that mine aren't really that well trained is a problem. But it's just, it just leaves too much to chance, in my opinion. I mean, the leash law does say it needs to be under complete control of the owner one way or another. I just don't agree with under verbal command, because anything can happen.
So Evangeline, to answer your question, your neighbor is responsible for their dog. So if it comes over to your property and causes a ruckus with your dog or damages your property, that pet owner is responsible for that.
Okay.
Thank you. You're welcome. Any other questions for?
Would you like me to send it to Ed, the ordinance to Ed, and have him put some options in there for you to consider?
Yes, please. And also touch back base with Shelby after she's had a chance to look at it and see if there's anything else that she would be interested in adding or deleting.
Got it.
I'm just looking here on the internet. It looks like Essex, Vermont just updated their leash law for the first time since 1996 this past November. Might be worth something looking at.
Yeah. Otherwise, Shelby, is everything going okay?
Yeah, everything seems to be doing all right. Got a kitty in my bathroom right now that's doesn't have a place to live. Picked him up off frontage road. For the longest time, I thought he was a girl. He's not. But he's a cool cat. Anybody want a cat?
No thanks.
No takers.
Not right now.
I don't want my daughter to hear you.
Oh, sorry. I've been trying to be a little more careful about where, like, I usually bring, when I get animals like this, strays that don't have a home or nobody, I usually try to bring them to a rescue or something so they can, you know, get them vaccinated, get them spayed and neutered and everything like that before they find a new home. But kind of just recently found out that one of those shelters charges me. Well, not me, but the town. And I was like, well, wait a minute, no. So I haven't really been going through them. So it's kind of taken some options out. So when I get animals, they hang out with me for a little bit longer than usual. More of an issue with cats this year than anything.
Okay. Well, keep up the good work. And we'll be back in touch.
Sorry, what was that?
I said keep up the good work and we'll be back in touch.
Well, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. And we'll tune.
Okay, so I believe we've kind of lost Shelby in the translation here. So moving on, Wendy,
Yes, can you hear me okay?
we can hear you great.
Okay. You have 2 sets of minutes to approve, January 6th and your special meeting on January 11th.
Okay, has everyone had a chance to read the minutes for January 6th?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to sign?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All right, so Chris motioned and Vern seconded.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, have we had a chance to look at the minutes from January 11th?
Yes.
Do I have a motion to sign?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Vern,
Second.
second by Chris. All those in
Okay.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
All right. Let's see, real quick. Dog licensing is going very well. People have been great about coming in, and we're well over 100 just in the first 2 weeks. So thank you, everybody, for that. We have a ton of town meeting updates to do, so I'm just going to talk and then butt in if you need to.
Okay.
The warning was officially published. It is posted everywhere around town, Instagram, Facebook, on 3 different spots on the website. If you do go to the website, you click on the link and all the tabs are there to look at the open positions on the ballot, to look at the RFP responses from the ambulance requests, petitions. There's a link there to the digital version of the town report. Just everything's there. I'll be adding to it as we get ballots, once we get our postcards back. But all the information is definitely out there. Town reports, the draft went to the printer last Friday, and I expect to have those back next week, the actual books. So I will be putting them at DeSorcy's, Martin's General Store, Highgate Library and Community Center, the town office, McEwen's, the arena. And then anybody that wants one mailed, just get a hold of me. We'll mail you a copy. And like I said, the digital version is also on the website. So we should have the town reports in circulation before the end of January, which is well ahead of when we're required to. We only need to have them out 10 days before town meeting, which in my opinion is just never long enough. So people are going to have a solid month or more to look over the material. Ballots, I will be ordering next week. I have to wait till after Monday's deadline for people to put in their consent forms. I should have ballots back by the end of the following week for town, ambulance, and from the school. So people can start getting their absentee requests into me. You can email me, you can do them through the website, you can do them through the My Voter page on the Secretary of State's office. You can stop in. The postcards, those should be going out very soon with all the information about town meeting, that we are fully Australian ballot, no floor meeting. I have a little proof of it here. Tells you how you can get an absentee ballot, how you can return your absentee ballot, speaks about the informational meeting that'll be held on February 22nd. Talks about town reports and how you can get one, how to register to vote. It mentions the ambulance RFP responses, how they can read those in advance of voting. So those postcards are going to be going out to all registered voter, 1 per voter household. And I think those will also be out next week, right around the same time as town reports. So do you have any questions for me?
no, sounds like you did a great job.
Well, it's a lot, but we're getting it done. And yeah, so absentee ballots, I anticipate, given some of the topics on the ballot, I anticipate and I hope we have a great voter turnout. I think we will. Shelley and I will be at the polls 7 to 7 at the arena on March 1st. The JPs will be coming in to help us out. There's going to be public skating going on that day. It's going to be a busy place at the arena, so stop by. I think that's all I had for town meeting. That about covers it all. The governor did sign all of those bills within the past week. 172, which authorized you to move town meeting to the ballot, which you had already made a motion to do pending the governor's decision. 222, which waives the requirement for signatures. So I don't need petitions. I just need your consent forms by Monday, the 24th at 5 o'clock. Sharon and Chris.
Mine's on your desk.
Thank you. I have Kyle's already. And then Bill 223, that was the one that waives having to have a physical location for meetings. Right now you have to have a physical location. You can add the Zoom. It waives that requirement if you so choose. If you needed to go to fully remote, you could do that.
Okay.
So, yep, it's been a busy week and Shelley's gone for a bit, but we got a lot done before she went so she could enjoy her vacation. And the only other thing I have are 3 liquor license renewal applications.
Okay, so I would make the motion to exit the regular select board meeting and enter into the liquor control board. Chris makes the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, you have 3 there. They are all second-class liquor licenses for Jolly Associates, DeSorcy's Market, and Martin's General Store.
Okay, can I have a motion to sign all 3 liquor control licenses? One for Martin's General Store, DeSorcy's Market, and for Jolly.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Vern makes the motion, Chris makes the second.
Okay.
Oh.
Send it on, please.
We did.
We have one thing to do.
So, Wendy, we have an issue.
What'd you do?
DeSorcy's and Martin Store are fine, but on the Jolly Associates,
Yeah.
we signed under signature of authorized agent as opposed to approved.
I'll call them tomorrow and see if we can make that work. If not, I get those via email. I could just reprint it. We could sign it at the next meeting.
Okay.
They're not due till April, so it's not a problem. That's why I have them do this early, because there are always hiccups. It's not a big deal.
One thing.
I know.
One thing we gotta do.
I apologize. It was my fault. I started it.
Okay, no worries.
Okay, so I'd make a motion to exit the liquor control board and enter back into the regular select board meeting.
Second.
Chris was the second.
Okay, and that was it for me.
Okay. Heidi,
Hey. Let's start out by talking about the airport infrastructure project. Last meeting, you approved the amended budget that was pared down to just design. And as a result, Northern Borders gave us a notice to proceed. So it becomes official when you sign it. So there is a copy in front of you for signature.
okay, does anyone have any questions about that?
No.
Okay, do we have a motion to sign the Northern Borders notice to proceed? And this is for the 500,000 that was granted to us for the airport.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Vern makes a motion, Chris does the second.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Yes, I signed on the right spot.
Okay.
On the same grant, I had mentioned that this will allow us to move forward with the design piece, utilizing those funds from Northern Borders. And I was hopeful that Wayne would be able to just amend his contract. Northern Borders will not allow us to use that contract and amend on it because it was signed prior to the notice to proceed. So I have to put it out to bid and get bids and go through that whole process. So hopefully by the next meeting, I can have something together for that, for you to approve. On the same topic, at some point we have to start the conversations with Swanton Village, discussing exactly how things would work, start that conversation. Shelley said a week or two after she's back, she'd be available for those discussions, and she wanted at least one select board member to sit in on those discussions.
Okay.
Do I have a volunteer?
Does anyone want to know how to run a water and sewer treatment program?
I'll sit in.
Okay, Chris has volunteered to sit in.
Yahoo! Okay. There's a summary well, I sent it to you electronically, and I think I put a copy there in front of Sharon. Notes from the discussion I had with those members of the that planning group, just to update everyone. And there is a letter from the state regarding their project to the stakeholders, and it it sounds like their construction schedule is parallel to ours, so everything should line up nicely.
So, in your summary, I'm reading the EDA grant. Can you explain the switch to gears for me?
You're talking about in the summary from the meeting, the switched gears. We had originally started an application to EDA for their implementation grant, and that was a 50% maximum award of the total project amount. When the ARPA funding came out, they announced a round that would allow up to 80%. So that was enough to get us to our desired amount. And that's what made it more difficult to fill out that application, because we needed specific COVID-related injury. And that's where that minor grant from Vermont Housing Conservation Board came in to pay EPR to round up those COVID data
Right.
points. And I gave you their draft report at the last meeting. They were aiming to finish that report by today. I need that report to submit with the application, but I haven't seen it yet. So that was the shifting gears. We jumped onto the other opportunity for a higher eligible amount.
Okay.
So I did put a whole printout of the application in front of you, and I've emailed it to all of you. There is in that program that it's an online program. Shelley is in it, as well as the Regional Planning Commission are all on that application. I've sent it to them for a review as well for any last minute edits, but I'd like to submit that grant as soon as we get the information from Jeff, because the sooner we get in, the better chance we have of having it be funded. And the deadline is in March.
Okay.
So we're waiting for Jeff's completed report, and that's your final piece?
That's correct. Yep. So if you authorize me, what I'll do is finish up the grant, send you the final report, and I'll submit it so that we have it in.
I'd like to review it one more time before I vote on it, but that doesn't preclude you three from voting.
Well, there's no reason why we can't take another look at it when I look at it.
I'd just like to run the numbers and. So yes, we have agreed to look at it for a final time, just to make sure we all understand what we're signing and going for, and when Jeff has his final piece, we could have a small emergency meeting to sign the document. Or authorize you to sign the document.
Okay.
Okay, next.
So moving to the Village Core project, there is a new appraisal agreement. So the last time we did not want to work with the person who had submitted a bid. We have a new bid from Larson Appraisal, and this amount is $3,000. So if you can approve that, I can get that appraisal started.
Okay. Do we have a motion to sign the contract with the appraiser?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Vern has made the motion.
Second.
Chris has made the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay.
Moving on to, so the planning grant for the Village Core, I just want to touch on, we have scheduled a hearing for the next meeting for the master planning grant that the Village Core is applying for. And that would be funding to get them to final design for a library design for a water system and several other pieces that they need. So this hearing on the 3rd is a prerequisite to applying. There was a round with a deadline in February, but they've canceled that. So the next opportunity to submit will be in April. But I checked, and having the hearing tomorrow will still qualify for meeting the criteria of a hearing. So I'll put the whole packet in for your February 3rd meeting, go through the presentation, and then we won't be able to submit until April. The passive safety grant has opened up. That's the one that's usually $5,000 with an equal match required. We've used it for the fire alarm, for video camera systems, and equipment for the departments. We were considering this year using it for the issue that was raised in the insurance inspection for a lack of surface material under the playground at the arena. So they've increased the amount. It's $10,000 this year with no match required. So much nicer deal. And I'm checking with Ty and Lee to see if they can get an estimate on what that's going to cost to have that done. And I don't know if you have any news, Ty.
I don't have any news. I was hoping I thought you were going to bring it up. I didn't know if Richard had any ideas of what a load of mulch. I don't know if Richford school system buys any for their playgrounds or not, but
How many ton are you talking, Todd?
I was thinking at least a half a trailer load.
Yeah, I think it cost us about $65 a ton.
How many ton do they put on a trailer?
Usually they bring us 29 ton, about $1,800 worth.
Okay. So not to put the kiboshes to the thoughts of using that passive grant, but a big safety issue that I didn't realize was as big an issue as it was until Monday night when I was running the 1 ton plow in the arena parking lot is the lack of communication that the town guys have in their trucks. They try to piggyback on each other to reach each other. I could hear Butch and Luke from the arena parking lot, but none of the 3 of us could get hold of Nick once he went over Carter Hill.
Yeah, I think Sharon's talked about that, about the communication of them trucks. I know Sharon said she wanted to get them updated.
I don't know if it would even fall in that passive grant, but
no, radios aren't eligible in that passive grant for whatever reason.
okay.
So it's got to be something that reduces a potential loss claim. I did speak with the department about the radios, and we were trying to get more information from Radio North. There was some conversation when we put the tower up for the St. Albans Police Department of putting a system up at that time, and I think it was in the area of 28,000, something like that. So they hadn't gone any further on it, but it's, I mean, it's got to be built into their, buildings and grounds, or
Okay.
in their budget.
So for the dollar value that Richard just said, for what we would need for mulch, I think we can support that within our own budget. I'm just speaking for myself as one member. If there's another need for that passive grant that for a bigger dollar value, I wouldn't be upset if another department needed it. Or if our department needed it for something else in the audit.
Well, Lee had also mentioned something about wanting to utilize the area over your lobby for like recording equipment and such, and that there's no railing on the stairs. There's supposed to be a gentleman coming to look at our carpet also. The carpet issue in the back room there, with the mats on top of the rug, they're a tripping hazard. We were cited in the inspection for that, but they won't cover flooring either. So he did say he'd come in and see if there were some alternative things we could do that would make that safer, because we can't pull those rugs up. It's all glue underneath there. It'd be more of a hazard than it is now. So I said I could probably get him to go over and take a look at that as well. But the way the insurance company was describing it, that playground surfacing gets expensive when you're covering a big area. And I don't know if you're starting from scratch when you get that amount, Richard, or if you're just resurfacing with that amount, because there's nothing on the playground now.
We, it took over at Highgate Elementary, we put in a whole new, underneath the swings and stuff, and one load covered what we wanted over at, over by, right by Todd Bushy's there. I don't know if you noticed it, but we put in a whole load there when I was on the school board, and that covered it was about the same thing as what Ty's asking for. So I don't know. I haven't looked at how big area Ty's got.
It'd be no bigger than what you did over by Todd Bushy's.
Okay, so we put one load in. 20, about 29 ton there.
Okay, well, we can pursue some bids on that. And if there's any other ideas, we can look into them.
Is that the same, that's the same grant that the fire department got the ice suits? Is that passive grant? Is that the same grant last year?
I don't know if we ended up getting them for that or not.
Because I know we got them, but I
Yes.
just didn't know.
Heidi, did that passive grant pay for the ice suits for the fire department?
It's paid for several things for the fire department. I know it got a few new suits one year. It might have replaced some air tanks. And I think I remember ice suits, but I can't remember if we went through with that or not.
Yeah, we did because we denied it, and then Joe brought it back, and because Kyle and I weren't sure about it, and then Joe brought it back, and we voted to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, yep. So yes. They gave us 5,000 towards the fire alarm we just installed. They've given us fireproof storage cabinets for the highway department and the arena.
Would the findings from the last fire alarm inspection, would it cover those corrective actions that are needed at the arena?
Possibly. What were the corrective actions? I don't.
I think all the heat detectors on the warm side are over 10 years old, need replacing. The strobes need synchronizing, and one other thing.
Yeah, I would suspect that would be a very high-ranking project. So can we connect about that, Ty, so we can figure that out?
Absolutely.
Okay. I think that's it for me. And just moving into the stuff for Shelley, the check warrant and the personnel policy.
Yep. Let's see here. Okay, since the personnel policy's on the top. So we had some confusion about the town's personnel policy that Shelley helped do some rewording. So it is based on compensatory time. There was a change. And there was one other spot. Has the board had a chance to look at the new personnel policy?
Yes.
Do we have any questions or concerns? Okay, do I have a motion to sign the updated?
Maybe I didn't see the updated one.
Okay,
About the comp time? The comp
yeah,
time and the overtime being a 1-for-1?
yeah, it's,
I think I might be looking at the old one. Because I was looking at, this didn't seem to be fixed when we discussed it the last meeting for my, so. Unless we're sticking with that.
exempt salaried
That's the words we needed?
as opposed to
Okay,
employee.
okay, we're good.
Yeah, and there was one other place she fixed too, and for the life of me, I can't remember where it was. Where was it?
I know it.
Okay, so do we have a motion to sign?
Motion.
All,
Second.
so Chris motioned, Vern seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Same. Okay, so has everyone had a chance to look at the check warrant?
Yes. Yes.
Can I have a motion to sign the check warrant?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Chris will make the motion, Vern will second. Kyle and I are just here for the ride. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
It's the Christopher Show. I keep going down in a hurry.
So Heidi, emergency planning.
Yes. I don't know much about it. You have all the information I have. I reached out to Sean Coleman and said, did he want to come in and give us a little overview? And he said he doesn't really have much more information than I do. So it's just a transition the state is doing from emergency planning committees to emergency management committees. So they're looking for, I think ideally one rep from the fire department and the emergency management coordinator or contact are both participating in the meetings.
Okay. All right, so we'll reach out to the fire department and see if we have a volunteer there, and then the volunteers are either myself, Kyle, you. Who else is on our emergency management? Wendy, are you on there?
Definitely a contact.
That's it, just a contact.
You said that too quickly.
Yep, you bet I did.
I think it's Sharon, myself, and then I'm drawing a blank who the other person is, and it might be the fire chief. I can have the, well, we'll be updating our emergency plan soon. Usually in the spring of each year, we have to update it. So I'll have that for you next time.
Okay, and then we can all decide who wants to go to an extra meeting.
Yeah, yay!
Okay. Anything else for regular select board?
No.
Anything else for regular select board, Heidi?
No. I have one item for executive.
I have one question to ask the select board.
Yes.
Have you been able to reach out to our state representative since the last meeting to see if we can get an update from him in February?
I had not, Ty, and I apologize, I dropped the ball.
No, no apology needed. I just wanted to bring it up again.
Are you? Sorry, are you talking about Paul Martin, representative?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I will say that the discussion for the airport project, he did participate in that, and he has very real interest in participating in the workforce development discussions with MBU for the career path training. And he let us know that his committee will be focusing on workforce development this year. So it's a very good fit. So hopefully we'll be seeing much more of him.
Okay.
So I actually lied. I do have one more thing. I put a map on your table just for your information. The redistricting issue took a sharp turn, and they scrapped the old map and put that new map in there. And it's a totally different plan than what they were talking about before. And it's Highgate and Sheldon, I believe.
Yeah, and Franklin, looks like.
And then some other weird piece. I can put it up on the screen so that people can see it. I had the map up.
Either way, Berkshire's gone, so that means Lisa's gone.
That stinks.
Yep, sure does. So is that
Yes, it
map
does.
up on the screen?
No.
Not yet.
It says I'm sharing, so maybe it'll just take a minute.
It hasn't opened it. It's on a screen before you opened it.
Well,
Double click it, maybe?
it's up on my screen and it says I'm sharing, so I'm not sure what the problem is. I'll go out and try to reshare it. There. Any better?
Yes, we got it.
Okay, cool. So there's a dog leg down at the bottom too that kind of looks like the border of Swanton and Fairfield. So it's an odd configuration. And apparently this is the new desired model. Just so you're in the loop.
You're gonna do what they want to do.
Right, exactly, exactly. Okay, did the personnel policy come back?
I thought it did. You sent the personnel.
Yes.
policy back.
Yes, it did.
Okay. All right. Okay, anything else for select board? Okay, I make a motion to exit the regular select board meeting to enter into executive with Heidi Birch Valenta.
Second?
Chris,
that a question? No. Okay.
Chris was the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.